Alright, welcome back to Game 10 of Lucid's 2022 tournament, where we are playing Phlegra. It is turn 28. Could be walking into a trap, probably walking into a trap. Maybe not though, maybe they moved out, because we do have a number of battles. So we found a magic site, that's in the good news department. Astral, can't really take great advantage of that just yet, but I'm sure we'll find a use. And then this looks like a breakout attempt by Raga, yeah, in a fort. Oh no, there's just a single mage here. Looks like maybe gonna make some fire elementals, but nobody's here. So yeah, Atlanta's kind of dancing back and forth on top of these forts. So this is a fort I think that's on our border. So we'll see, if Raga decides that they want to take some revenge on us. Okay, so they didn't move out, and they moved a bunch of stuff in, it looks like, as well. So this is probably not going to go well for us. We should kill a lot of undead, at least, right? The fire elementals will do pretty well against that. Yeah, there's a bunch of bugs. Bugs are actually pretty good against ranged units, because we probably got some friendly fire there with our crossbows, and flaming crossbows and such. Still, we have a priest. That's in the good news department. Actually, also relevant is the bless back online. Oh yeah, this is the worst case scenario. So the god did come back online this turn. So yeah, we can kiss this army goodbye, and we're not likely to do much in the way of damage. You can see that, I don't think Utgard, they may have had some idea, right, that this was going to happen. They were close. But I don't think that they knew for sure, because they had their undead out in front, and frankly, I don't think they would have needed to lose their undead if they knew that their bless was going to be online. So now we kind of get to test the worst case scenario, and our mage support is relatively light here. So while we're not likely to kill that many sacreds, if we can eliminate, honestly, any of them, that's a decent sign. But we can see that even though they are set on fire, right, this is not going well for us. Yeah, man. One turn late. Well, actually, I don't know. It could have come online last turn. We don't actually know exactly when the bless came online. I do think we maybe killed a few of them. I'm not sure. Not that many. Obviously we lose. That's not super surprising. At least it wasn't Barbarian PD. It was actually Deer Tribe Province Defense, which kind of sucks. Although in some ways, our crossbowmen are pretty heavily armored, but yeah, a bunch of archers. Not great for the ranged fire duel. So yeah, I knew that was a dangerous attack. We lose the majority of our stuff. But we do kill 8 sacreds, which, out of 40, that's not great. But we're planning on having a lot more mage support for the next fight. We can see that our Mouflon do the best just in terms of killing units. Our Helit crossbowmen, honestly, pretty underwhelming here. That said, they're not good against undead, right? The undead have a natural pierce resistance. But still, I was expecting with the flaming arrows that they do, a bit better. Also, not great results for our mages, though. We can see, considering there's only 2 oppressors here and 1 archon, and a lot of their fatigue was spent generating fire elementals, which aren't going to count directly to their kill count. Yeah, this is bad. We do kill all the long dead, so, that's something. There was actually a serious amount of mage commitment here, which I don't think was too relevant. It looked like there was some body ethereal spam, but again, that is upsetting for our Mouflon, but otherwise doesn't really matter too much in terms of what we were doing. A decent amount of our stuff actually survives, probably mostly Helit crossbowmen. We do lose the majority of our mages. It does look like 1 oppressor and 1 archon at least retreat off the field. Yeah, it looks like most of the units all the commanders that retreat and a lot of the units that retreat successfully. We probably lose a good chunk more of our crossbowmen. But honestly, I know this is bad. Make no mistake, this is a loss and a painful loss. But considering that it was the worst case scenario where Utgard reinforces with, I don't want to say the majority of their mage core, but a significant chunk of their mage core, their bless was back online. They did not quite as large of a province defense dump as I thought they might, but still a large province defense dump. Pretty much everything was against us here, and we still managed to kill 8 Gamherdings and eliminate all the chaff. So, Utgard might push forward against us, but if they do, I actually think we're in an okay spot. Now, in terms of us taking the offensive, that's going to be a few turns. And speaking of, so yeah, they do move out somewhere. This is probably, no, they're just pinging. So I guess they're pretty worried about, major province defense dumps. I'm not actually sure where this is, but yeah, we just have this standard 6. Not afraid to province defense dump here and there, but I prefer not to. And this is our attack in the south, so yeah, not expecting too much, but we had to respect the fact that there is a stack of 40 of their sacreds in the fort next door. We were planning on going north to the province just to the north of this. However, with the Blessed back online, I believe that province is also in range of the fort where all the Gamherdings are hanging out, and now we kind of need to rethink. Right, there's roughly a similar amount of mage support here as that previous army, and yeah, that obviously didn't go super great for us. We have a lot fewer units here, so anyway, all this to say, we may retreat a little bit, although we do have reinforcements coming for this army. And then it looks like there were a couple battles in Kalem. I'm assuming this is the last Kalian force coming out, yeah, to confront what Ulm has. Ulm has quite a few sacreds, and it looks like some body ethereal spam. On Kalem's side, there's a bunch of corpse constructs out front, some archers, some Kalian archers. I think they just have, regular bows, and composite bows, I guess. And then quite a few independent crossbowmen, and then, some bird infantry, and quite a few casters, it looks like. Yeah, quite a few of their Death and Earth. Yeah, I really don't know late age Kalem. Doesn't really look like many. Well, no, here's a gem. Still, not a lot of gems. So I don't know. I don't think this bodes well for Kalem. And then yeah, on Ulm's side, I think it's mostly body ethereal spam in terms of their mage support. Yeah, which, especially this early on, if you're not up against magic weapons, although, I don't know, Kalem definitely can get magic weapons, at least in other ages. Doesn't really appear like they've done so in this case. I don't really know why Kalem is invested so heavily in archers, but yeah, I mean, I am not an expert at Kalem in any way, shape, or form. Kind of cool to see late age Ulm, use these sacreds here. Well, it does look like some are routing. No, maybe just set to attack closest and then see a different target they like the look of. I feel like a lot of players don't really utilize late age Ulm sacreds. I like heavy cavalry, so if I ever play late age Ulm, don't want to put myself in a box. We'll see, but the temptation will be strong. They do seem solid. The body ethereal spam has been pretty good considering how many units. Not everybody got it, but quite a few did. So that's going to matter a lot, again, because there's not really a lot of magic weapons here. Just to remind ourselves of the Bless, here it is. Yeah, very rainbowy. Definitely relevant. That Blood Surge and extra defense is going to matter a lot in these regular bowmen against, heavy cavalry, sacred heavy cavalry, they're just going to get absolutely destroyed in melee. The crossbowmen are dangerous, and I expect there probably will be a few casualties on Ulm's side, but, the body ethereal really helps with that. The crossbowmen are dangerous at range, at this point, yeah, they're in big trouble. Also, some skeletons coming out from Ulm, somewhat relevant for us, just to keep an eye on, but not really too relevant for this fight. So that looks like it went pretty badly for Kalem. Yeah, they still have 50 units-ish, but not a whole lot else. A lot of their mages do escape, so that's something, but I think this is realistically their last major effort. It's not without cost for Ulm. They do lose an adventurer, which is, would be sad. He is a healer. That's kind of sad, although I don't know how much, disease and affliction issues late age Ulm has. He's only a holy 2 otherwise, so not that big a deal. They lose a fortune teller. I think that's a cap. Nope, not a cap only, or if it is, very cheap cap only, so that's not too bad. They do lose 4 of these illuminated ones. Also very cheap, though. Yeah, a lot of cheap astral here. And then otherwise, in terms of troop losses, mostly irrelevant. They do lose 8 of their sacreds, right? So that's probably the biggest deal among that. But out of 75, that's not that big a deal. So yeah, I'd say that Ulm is probably pretty happy with this result, and that Kalem made a good effort at a last stand. Oh, nice, that's kind of cool. They have just a small assault force, or maybe the commander who is going to be leading more of the assault force died, so they just have some of these Zweihanders. Yeah, their great sword. A lot of horror marking going on here. And then just, a group of these Black Knights. Black Templars. They're Sacred Heavy Cavalry. So pretty small group going into this fort, but yeah, it looks like everything came out to fight and like nothing retreated back into the fort. So I think they're going to be able to take this without any trouble. There's just like those regular archers on the wall, and they just don't deal enough damage. I don't think it's going to matter. It's kind of interesting that, where are we going, guys? Yeah. Anyway. Dominion's pathfinding, not the greatest. So they do lose a Zweihander, but otherwise they take a capital. That's a pretty good result. You know, Calum chose to have the final battle outside the walls, which makes sense, right? Because the majority of those forces were coming as reinforcements from another fort. So I think that's pretty much going to be it for Calum. It is going to be a little interesting who gets the last Kalian fort. Probably looking like Ulm. It seems like Micklin has pretty much gotten what they want out of the Calum fight and is now committed to fighting Vettiheim. We have some unexpected events. You know, magic site. Maybe, I think we can send a nature mage in here to potentially find this guy. And I think this is from the Rebirth mod, so it just adds population to really dead provinces to kind of counteract population kill nations, although in this case I think it just found a province that for whatever reason generated with really, really low population. Or maybe this is where one of our plague events hit. And then, yeah, barbarians, of course. We'll have to, or do we get attacked? Yeah, we don't get attacked. So hopefully I'll put something in Belagor, and I'll catch you guys after the jump. All right, this is the situation and what we're doing about it. Gathering the pieces of our army, of course. So luckily, a good amount of stuff retreated here, so we're going to be able to pull that back to the throne province immediately. Unfortunately, a good chunk of units retreated to a province where no commanders retreated, so we're probably going to lose that. It depends. Utgard may go in a couple of directions. We'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, we are recruiting a commander here, so if Utgard doesn't come into this province, we will be able to gather this stuff up and bring it back to the throne province. Otherwise, just bringing up the reinforcements that we were expecting. We're also pushing forward, a few other mages as well. And so we should have a reasonable amount of stuff here. I think we'll also be able to bring up one more witch, because I think she'll finish this turn, which will be a good amount of bug support. If Utgard attacks immediately, we probably won't quite be able to hit Alteration 6, which is what we're going to need for Battle Fortune. I confused it. We don't actually have that yet, so we will get it if we make it to 6. We don't have it yet. I was mixing it up with Incinerate, which of course we did get at Alteration 5, and is the more important piece. I mean, making the bugs lucky would be nice, but we can generate enough bugs, like even if they don't have luck. I think it's going to tie up Utgard's sacreds long enough that our mages can do their work. We are also forging a little bit more gear. Let's see, somewhere there's a vine shield being forged. Yeah, so we're going to forge a vine shield and then a dancing shield, basically just a bunch of kit that is going to be useful for our pretender in terms of clearing out province defense, since we know there's a massive province defense dump we have to clear here. And once Utgard moves out of here, we'll probably also use our pretender to clear this province defense dump and any others that we find where we can send our pretender without too much risk, right? We don't want to send our pretender into an obvious trap. So if there's, say a province defense dump here and, a bunch of gam herdings, like that's too dangerous, right? The gam herdings could move out and catch her. Now, whether or not we'll send her out to clear the province defense dump up here immediately, it kind of depends on what Utgard does. We may send her anyway, but basically we forged a Frostbrand, which is probably the most useful and cost-effective item for clearing province defense, like that we have access to right now. But it's not going to be very good against Utgard's sacreds. They have built-in cold resistance. Now, at the end of the day, like our pretender, the main way that she's going to be dealing damage is via the petrification, so any weapon damage she deals is pretty secondary, and I don't know if it's worth, delaying a whole turn. We can also forge this guy, the Mace of Eruption, so, that's fire damage, which will be much more useful against Utgard's Sacreds, and it'll still clear province defense pretty well. Don't really know if it's worth, the 10 extra fire gems and having to, wait another turn. So we'll probably actually just send her out against this province defense dump, and then, she'll just come back and fight in the battle with the Frostbrand, and it's fine. This turn, she is site searching, and our palisade, will finish before Utgard arrives, which is actually a bit of a mixed bag, because this PD type is Well, actually, I thought there was crossbowmen here, so never mind. It is what it is. Our Fort Province defense is not great, but we at least get a bunch of archers, so, we can cast flaming arrows. They're just short bow archers, so, they're not going to do that much, but, the little bit of fire damage will help. Otherwise, we're going to go ahead and pull this group back for the most part. We did split out like a few Mouflon, just 6 here to try to raid into this. So obviously if this bumps with the Gamherdings, we'll lose it. But if he doesn't come out, if he has other things that he needs to deal with, then we'll retake this province. It did get taken by villains, so that's probably our misfortune, although I imagine Utgard also, has quite a bit of misfortune. And so we're just going to send the rest of our stuff back because now the Bless is back online. Like, we need a lot of mage commitment before, we can really think that we're going to, beat something like this. So, this amount of mage commitment is significant, but it's not going to be enough. Like, this looks pretty similar to, what we just lost with up here. So I think we're moving a few reinforcements forward. We have drained a lot of our mages from, our core lands. Like, really, this is the only fort that we have that can really provide us any defense, and we're not expecting to need any defense, but we don't want to leave ourselves completely uncovered, especially considering that, we don't have a non-aggression pact with Ulm. We've talked about how that's not a likely attack, but it's also not impossible, especially considering that, Utgard posted, our losses of, our half of the battle report to the group chat. So, everyone's aware. I kind of just assume that everyone has scouts. I know that's not always true, but, that's the safe assumption, is assume that your enemies have seen it. Oftentimes it's wishful thinking, like, oh yeah, they won't have a scout. Like, nobody knows. Like, probably the opponents know, and it's better to just assume that they do know. So, this is, of course, going to make us look more juicy, to everybody. But I think, Ulm has, like, enough issues. Yeah, and their main army is, like, pretty far out of position to come fight us. So it's going to take a few turns for them to move back. And they're probably going to want to clean up this Kalian fort first. This probably isn't the only army that they have. They're probably building up another, fairly substantial force. So, we'll have to see. But at the same time, I feel like us fighting Utgard basically gives us diplomatic cover, right? Because it's like, people are probably not worried about Phlegra. People probably are worried about Hellblessed Utgard. So, is Ulm going to try to collapse us from the back via this, awkward war? Like, probably not. Like, they probably have other plans and are probably, content and or happy, right, that at least somebody is inflicting some losses on Utgard, so it'll make their life easier. But still, it is a consideration, so, ideally we don't pull all of these mages out of this fort. Recruitment-wise, we're doing what we can inside of our forts. I think, we're recruiting a couple of these guys. Still not really sure on them, but it's probably the best, power that we can get out of this location. Because, this location, there's not a lot of resources that we're getting, out of this fort. Again, resources have kind of just been an issue and kind of just given up, right? We put a fort here. I think we're just going to go with, number of forts. So at least that way we can push out a lot of mages, and our troop recruitment is going to be kind of constrained in each fort, but we can recruit out of all of them. So it's going to be a little bit more hassle in terms of collecting everything, and maybe a little slower if we had some better placed forts. I do think that, as late age Phlegra and probably really the whole nation line, it's so tempting to put forts, on top of really valuable provinces, and normally that is the play. But these guys are so resource intensive that it does kind of feel like, well, it's not enough, to say put a fort here that has a lot of good surrounding resource provinces. You really probably should put it in a high resource province to begin with. But that, that's not what I did. So we're just going to go with number of forts. And so I think, there's a mix, we're getting a few Mouflon here. And then, some more crossbowmen. I do think the crossbowmen are still going to be useful for us. They didn't do great in that battle. We're also trying to round out our patrollers. A few Mouflon. A few more for our patrollers. Because we really are getting hammered. This 43 unrest here, 10,000 population province, income 39. We're losing a lot of income to this, and then our capital it's going to get more wrecked. In some ways, I almost kind of want to wait for the mountain to blow up, and because we're going to get a bunch more unrest, no doubt, and so then we can just patrol it down once the mountain is done doing its thing. But you can see, actually, this province here, right, we're actually getting quite a few crossbowmen out of here. and this is just a palisade right now, but again, it's built in a location that has high resources. So this is kind of the fort that like really tipped me off. I'd heard before like people saying like, yeah, with this nation like you really should build in highlands or forests or whatever. But it had always seemed to me that as long as you were careful to make sure that you had a lot of surrounding provinces with decent resources, that will offset it. And I play a lot of early age, which has lower resource requirements. So I do think for a lot of nations that's true. But if you have really high, intense resource costs, like putting them in a high resource province is a good idea. And I think this fort really demonstrates that. So that kind of covers our recruitment, and our movement and what we're up to. For the diplomatic situation, Atlantis has started fighting with Utgard. I think this was an Utgard province, but yeah, there was some small raids that Atlantis has done, but they now are at war. Obviously, they're not fully committed, but I don't think this is going to take too much longer. So I think Atlantis probably will commit fully in the not too distant future. They have a pretty large border with Utgard. They're not too far from Utgard's capital, and there's also the possibility. Yeah, it looks like Utgard has rebuilt the fort on top of Midgard. So they're going to have an opportunity to pick up 2 capitals potentially. And that's going to be pretty attractive for Atlantis while Utgard is busy fighting 2 other people. But yeah, so Atlantis, reached out. I think both Atlantis and Vedheim actually reached out to kind of offer condolences and, try to pick up my spirits, make sure that I wasn't going to bail out of the war. And I assured them that I wasn't, because I'm not. We've talked about like why we're committing to this, and it is a bit questionable, right? Like fighting Utgard isn't really ideal for us, and I'm only really planning on picking up limited territory. Like we really just need to fight Utgard to the point where someone else is in position to take them out. If it goes really well somehow, like yeah, sure, wouldn't mind picking up the capital, but like realistically, if we can pick up something that looks like this, and then maybe like this fort down here, really depends. I think that's really all that like we're looking for. Well, I say all that we're looking for. That's a good chunk of territory, definitely. But we're not really looking at like the core lands of Utgard. We're probably not going to pick up a capital from this. So we'll probably fight them to the point where they have a lot of other problems and aren't likely to recover. At that point, we may switch over. At some point, we'll switch over to fighting Vedheim. Because yeah, Xibalba really makes like a lot more sense, especially if we make these gains. And I think Vedheim, they're pretty confident. And clearly like the way that they were able to set that trap up for Utgard's Pretender, they're clearly a good player. But they seem relatively unconcerned about Miklin, and I guess I'm more concerned, but I also don't really know the matchup, so they absolutely could be right in that, they're going to have no problem fighting Miklin off, but yeah, I'm less sure, so we are trying to move some scouts over there to get eyes on that. And then, related to the fact that I don't actually think Utgard's position is all that great, they actually, again, reached out for peace and didn't really provide an appealing offer. Utgard didn't really even make an offer. I think they just assumed that I would want peace. And, when it was clear that I wasn't going to give that to them, they just asked how much they needed to take, how much damage they needed to do before, I would accept peace, which I don't know. I don't think that's a great negotiating strategy if you're the one coming and asking for peace. So there's a good chance that Utgard walks at us, right, considering, how that conversation went. But at the same time, the same reasons that make this kind of a longer range, more questionable war for us, it's the reverse is true for them, right? They have a pretty long way to go before they're actually even going to get to our troop infrastructure. And we're about to have a palisade here. So, in the same way that it's like this is a kind of a long-range war for us, it's going to be a long time before they can really threaten us. I'm sure that, this player recognizes that, and, they probably have problems closer to home. So, yeah, we'll see what Utgard decides to do, but I don't really foresee this war ending because I just don't really like their negotiating style. And they, haven't really offered anything either. They offered to split the gem income from Xibalba's capital, which, of course, they do not own at this point. Well, actually, it's been a second since we've been there, but, considering that their army has been parked here and was fighting us, I don't see, what they would have used to take Xibalba. So it's, the last offer that they made, which I wasn't interested in. They can't even fulfill anyway, and they didn't come up with any new offers. So yeah, that's kind of the diplomatic situation as it stands right now, working with Atlantis and Vedheim against Utgard. But again, that's not really where we want to go long term. I don't think that a long-term peace with Utgard is sustainable, right? Because again, they always couch it as, hey, leave us alone while we finish Vedheim. And so we're like, okay, well, what? And after that? And of course, they could decide to go elsewhere. Obviously, they have big borders with other people, so we're not necessarily guaranteed to be their next target. And certainly if I had played this differently and just acceded to their demands, then there's a fair chance that, we could have had peaceful relations. But again, that takes us back to, okay, but what's our other war going to be? And, we've talked about why it's unattractive in a lot of ways. So it's like, this is, where our forces are. And interestingly, as kind of thinking about it, like, why are we even in this war? Like, how did we get here? And, I think some of it is just like when you have Hell-Blessed Sacreds, you sort of force everyone to react to them, right? Like when I saw that bless, and I'm sure plenty of other players were the same, right? The question is like, okay, what am I going to need to actually beat that? So we've actually altered our research somewhat to make sure that we have research that I at least think is going to counter these sacreds. Now, of course, as always, I could be wrong, but it's like, I have been thinking about and setting up for fighting Utgard for a fair number of turns now. And, part of that is just because it's like, well, if you don't have an answer to those sacreds, then you just die, right? So you need to at least have something in your back pocket that you can work towards. And then, of course, they ended up in the same territory that we were planning on grabbing. So it's kind of like we have the research to fight them. They have not been pleasant, and they're in the area that we would like to take. So it's like that's kind of why we're there. And I do think that if you bring out Hell-Blessed Sacreds, it's a diplomatic problem. Now, of course, there is Mictlan over here, sitting on top of a quickness bless. So like certainly, you can make the argument like, hey, hang on, like it also applies to Mictlan. Although I would say that like their scales actually are not that bad. In fact, I'm not 100% sure that these are their scales. Yeah, okay, this looks more like their scales. So not great, but like not complete Hellbless. And like I would say like Utgard's I think are significantly worse. Yeah, from the little that we've seen, they did manage to get like the one growth it looks like, but they're full drain, full turn, like they've dumped almost everything else. But you certainly could make the same argument for Mictlan. And, I think it just comes down to those other factors, combined with the fact that, even the player for Utgard has said that this player for Mictlan is the best player left in the game. So now I have like two pretty good players, because, Utgard is by no means a bad player from what I've heard and what we've seen so far. That this other player, is pretty excellent. So it just is not an appealing war. And since we're already kind of set up for this for other reasons, then it's like, well, this is where we're going to go. And it's going to be pretty difficult for Utgard to come up with an offer that I think is going to work for both of us. So anyway, that's a lot of thoughts on diplomacy, and I think that more or less covers turn 28.